Are ghosts real? Several recent encounters suggest there might be more things in heaven and earth than we can dream of.
So are werewolves just a Hollywood creation, or do half-man, half-wolf creatures really exist? Now, tonight, we kick off our Conspiracy Theory Month series, which was
The legend of the vampire actually goes back for centuries, and it exists in some form or another in almost every culture. In fact, some people believe the first vampire story was in the Bible.
Well, for decades, only crackpots and crazy people believed in UFOs. That's what I thought anyway. And then in recent years, it turns out that governments have been taking them seriously all along.
Try and clear up an ancient mystery with the help of a prominent veterinarian who says she can prove that Bigfoot exists and that he's related to all of us.
New reports, 5 pilots coming forward over the weekend saying they've had multiple mid-air encounters with high-flying, fast-moving objects.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to the newest episode of Celestial Oddities, the PONG Paranormal Guys podcast. And that is brought to you by Brutal Business Entertainment and Celestial Oddities Radio, bringing you 100% real and raw underground entertainment. As always, I will be your host, Frater Crow. And we might have lost Dan. See, ladies and gentlemen, there's been something going on lately which is very peculiar to me, and it seems like my last radio show, if you listen to Nights of the Nephilim, the connectivity was dropped multiple times on the phone call, which has never happened before. Now this evening, boom, right off the bat, Daniel has been dropped. We had been talking about people trying to silence truth, and that has been a big focus lately within the episodes. And sure enough, it seems that it says there's a poor connection. Meanwhile, I have full bars. So not sure as to why that is happening, but if you are listening out there, any sharing around that you can do would help us. We do bring you an episode every other week on Thursday nights normally, but right now we're kind of out of sync and we're bringing it to you on a Wednesday. That'll be from 8:30 p.m. to normally 9:30. Tonight's show will most likely run till 10. We have an Oddworld episode for you, which means that people will be calling in from around the world to share their experiences and encounters with the strange and unusual. And we have 5 people set this evening to speak with, and we will be talking to them about what it is that they've experienced, from abductions to UFO sightings, hauntings, ghosts, and premonitions, and much, much more. Now, we're going to try to bring Dan back on the line here in just a moment. I think actually we have him right there, so we'll see if that's him right there. Daniel, you're with us. Daniel, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right, folks, there's Daniel back. I was explaining to them that, obviously about the show, what we do, what tonight's episode is based on, and also how lately it seems that there has been some type of interruption, because even my guest the other night, Patrick Guafero from the International Church of Lucifer, he was dropped multiple times during the episode, and that never happens, and he was cut off multiple times as we were talking about the fact that both of us have been heavily silenced lately, and sites have been taken down, things of that nature. He lost connectivity multiple times, and he says that never happens on his end, it never happens on mine, and sure enough, the very start of the show this evening, you're gone. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. But folks, I did want to explain real quick that we did take a hiatus there kind of unexpectedly, and I wanted to apologize on that, but myself and my family had an opportunity to jump on a home and purchase it kind of unexpectedly, and to do so obviously required a lot of packing up of our old home, moving to the new, unpacking, fixing up the old one, and getting it on the market. So unexpectedly, we just stopped the show. We were 2 episodes into season 3, and then most of you probably heard us just vanish, wondered what was going on. I would have put up posts about it, but in that time frame, Facebook decided to ban me permanently from their website, and other sites that I have actually recently been a target as well, along with a slew of other very strange things that have been happening in my side of things here to try to silence the message that I bring you as far as esoteric and occultism, as far as paranormal and supernatural. So we are back this evening for episode 3 of season 3, Oddworld, Listeners Encounters, and we are very excited to be back. Make sure you click the like, share, and follow button on whatever platform you're listening to us from, whether it be iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Deezer, Spreaker, CastBox, Google Play, Amazon Podcasts, or anything in between. We air across absolutely everywhere, and we appreciate you certainly getting the message out there. The more that you click those buttons, the more that it moves us up the podcast community rankings, allows more people to discover the show, keeps you in the loop with new episodes as they air, and gives you unfiltered access to our past archives, not only with this show here, the PONG Paranormal Guys podcast, where we deep dive into content matter of the paranormal and supernatural, bring on professionals within those fields, and as tonight, take on phone calls from around the world, or be one of our other 2 shows, Knights of the Nephilim podcast based upon esoteric science, occult doctrine, and ritual magic, interviewing the biggest and best names in occultism, from ritual practitioners to toolmakers, theologians, and everything in between, or be our final show, Uncovering the Underground, talking with and interviewing professionals within the field of art, whether that be music and modeling, stars of the big screen, comedy, oddities, or everything in between. We aim to give you something for everyone out there. So make sure you help support us by clicking those buttons. Daniel, it's great to be back, my brother.
Yeah, man, feels great. I've been itching to get back into it, talk to some people, collect some stories.
Absolutely, man, and hopefully things work with us. It goes a little thrown off there whenever you disappeared at the beginning again. I'm like, oh, damn it, because that literally happened. Timing. Well, and it happened exactly at the beginning of last episode. Literally started the beginning of the episode, and I was talking about Patrick and said, Patrick, welcome to the show. Click, gone. And it happened 3 times back to back, and it was just very strange. So we'll see what happens, man. All we can do is what we can do and work with what we got. But I would like to start this evening's episode, before we make our phone calls, with a listener's account that was typed up and sent in to us, if that's all right.
Yes, absolutely. I know nothing about it. I have not been briefed on this yet, so I'm interested to hear about it, as I'm sure as everyone else is. And
folks, let us tell you that these are not planned or anything like that. If anything, I sometimes, or Daniel, will gather a very small tidbit of information to understand maybe what the person's calling in about to make sure it fits the show. But we do not fully have them discuss with us. We do not fully read what they're sending, just an overview quickly. So I have only skimmed through this. Daniel hasn't heard it at all. And most of the phone calls this evening, neither of us really knew anything about the experiences that the callers will be sharing with us. Now, as you're probably aware of making phone calls through not only online phone calls through Skype and through my phone and things of that nature, there could be some technical difficulties. So please be patient out there if there are, especially with the weirdness of things that are going on out there. But this first story this evening comes to us from a gentleman by the name of Alex. And Alex says, "Hello, Frater and Daniel. I wanted to share just the basics of not only my story, but the story of my family. It all starts on US 35, somewhere between Richmond and Muncie, Indiana, circa 1938, where my great-grandmother, on my father's mother's side, saw a flying saucer, as she described it, as a little girl. Mind you, this woman went from being a poor farm girl riding in a horse carriage to seeing a man walk on the moon, if you believe that sort of thing, to what we have now. Her first abduction happened in 1958/1959, shortly before my grandmother was born. The next sighting was by my grandmother in the early 1960s. She saw what is now described as the Greys, standing in the tree line by her schoolyard playground. Her list of abductions is too numerous to go into significant detail. However, this trend of abductions has been going on throughout the generations of my great-grandmother, grandmother, my father, and now I fear myself. What are y'all's thoughts on generational ET/UFO phenomenon? I never put much stock in their stories, as I thought, honestly, they were crazy, until a few days ago. I'm in a relatively good health aside from a thyroid disease and being a smoker. I have no diagnosed mental disorders, and yes, I have been seen by various mental health professionals since this event that I'm going to describe. Now, he sent us this a little bit back right before we jumped off the air because of me buying the house. So this was very quickly after this event happened. He reached out to us. But as you hear, he went to medical professionals to check on his mental stability because he thought he was going crazy. But this is something that runs in his family. So let me describe to you here. July 15th, 2022, between the hours of 1:30 a.m. and 2 a.m. I just got home from work and am laying in bed, lights out, completely relaxed and dozing off. I fall asleep. I'm awakened by a loud, and I mean loud, humming/buzzing sound, along with a mechanical sound. I can't move. I see small creatures, what I now believe to be the Greys, at the foot of my bed, and hear entities all around me. I scream, but no words or sound are coming out. I can still breathe with ease. In my view is my clock. 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. A white light drowns out everything in my vision as I'm being lifted up and outside of my room through my window. Not out of my window, through my window and wall, as if I evaporated and rematerialized someplace else. Everything goes black. I wake up not in my room, but out in my shed. My pajamas are on backwards and inside out. I can now move, but so scared I refuse to attempt to get up. My girlfriend finds me in the shed and she was worried, asked what I was doing out there, and told her I didn't know. I just woke up out here and that I'd only been gone a few minutes, if that. She says, no, I've been looking for you for over 5 hours. It was around 9 a.m. I asked if she saw or heard anything around the time that I disappeared, and she had said no. I asked if the door alarm, security cameras, or anything of the such caught me sleepwalking. She said no. I don't know what happened to me that day. I don't think I want to know. I did not choose this to happen. I didn't want it to. I told my grandmother all of the details, and she said she was worried it would happen again, or that she was worried that it would happen again. I asked what she meant, and she couldn't tell me other than one day as a little kid I was watching Star Wars for the first time, and during the Katina scene with the alien band playing that looked similar to Grey's, that I started screaming and cried when I saw that and said, I don't like these people. They hurt me. I have no memory of that, only her word to go by. But after this incident, I have no idea what to think, and I'm scared that it'll happen again. I'm in the process of cataloging all of the information from both my great-grandmother and grandmother, as my father has passed away years ago. I don't know why I am doing this other than to know what has happened to me, especially when I'm not sure I even want to know. Your thoughts, please.
Okay, well, I feel like I've heard almost what seems like is a countless, very similar stories to this exact one, and I certainly have an explanation from my own personal perspective. Obviously, Frater, you'll have your own, but what I would just say really briefly is that this to me sounds like what's called as the hybridization program, where when people say the Greys, that's actually a blanket term for what's more than 150 different subspecies of Zeta Reticuli beings from the Zeta Reticuli star system. So when people talk about the little green men, the Greys abducting them or taking them from their homes, maybe even relatives in their past having these experiences as well, people experiencing missing time, things like that. The hybridization program it's a system where this particular race will take people and sample their genetic material, their DNA, their reproductive material, reproductive signatures, and their energy signatures, their energy frequency, to make what's called as hybrid children, where you've got like a hybrid human that could also be mixed with other extraterrestrial races and then mixed predominantly with the Zeta Reticuli. From what it's said through the hybridization program is that this particular species of Zeta was no longer able to procreate and breed, so they were sampling human DNA and genetics to make a hybrid race that would continue out their species. So that, to my understanding, has been pretty much the answer for every time someone's been taken by that particular race. And then when it comes to abductions, I also don't want to lump this particular explanation into every single occurrence. There's also other ETs that also take people for other reasons. But in this case, when it comes to the Zetas, that would be my perspective.
No, it is very interesting. I mean, I've heard a lot of similar stories with some of the same elements. Rematerialization, feeling like you were moving through a wall or through the roof of your home, bright light, time lapses, waking up in a different place than where you last remember cognitively being before everything went blank, the humming sound, the machinery sound. I mean, all of it. I don't want to say textbooks as in it's just such a basic thing. I'm saying textbook as in most abductees have had very consistent similar stories because they're having very consistent similar experiences.
Right.
So it is very interesting. What I find very interesting of this story, not only the story itself, Dan, but great-grandmother, grandmother, father, and now him. That is unique. I have heard about generational abductions, but it's not as common. So to hear 4 generations of this gentleman's family all having abduction scenarios, it sparks my interest as to why.
Yeah, I would say that there's something called, contracts, spiritual contracts and collective agreements that maybe that whole family and bloodline made on some sort of like more spiritual level, where they, from what I understand, although consciously people don't want to get abducted and taken, it seems very foreign and, you feel like you're disempowered. But I would say that maybe there are what's called as like soul contracts, where on a spiritual level, you maybe did agree to it. Because look at it like this. I'm not saying it's pleasant. I'm not saying that consciously you agree to it, but unconsciously, maybe before you were born or in some way, cosmic way you did. Because if you're not being physically harmed in sort of a way that like you're coming back like missing limbs or missing a kidney or something, like, you know what I mean? Like if they wanted to take you forever for terrible, nefarious reasons, you would be gone.
True. Very true. So you have to wonder, there's some type of, like you said, a contract going on where there are each and every generation of your family examining you, picking you up, maybe downloading something into your mind that you're not aware of, or doing something not necessarily to your detriment, but for your benefit.
Exactly.
And it's interesting. I mean, we won't know exactly the reason. We can't. But it is very piquing of my interest. Like I said, there has to be a reason generation after generation. And if you're coming back unharmed,
you might be helping these people. You might be helping these creatures some way.
There's something in your DNA that maybe is helping them, and every so often they need to come back and get more of it to help their people. It can be scary, it can be bewildering, but at the same time, they're not harming you as they easily could, especially if you're blacking out for 5-6 hours at a time, and then you're waking back up fine. They could have done anything during those 6 hours if they wanted to.
So what I would say to this particular person is research the hybridization program. There's a lot of fascinating reports by people who have a more conscious awareness of this whole hybridization thing, where they actually have kids. And when they're gone and they're missing time, I've actually read stories of people telling me personally, because I work in the extraterrestrial community, that they talk about having hybrid children. And when they're taken and they disappear on these ships, they don't really remember everything, but they're actually spending time with their hybrid kids that they're the parents of, and it's actually a very loving experience. I've heard all this stuff.
I've actually read about that as well, and the experience that I had read about or had heard about was from a famous theologian / YouTuber, and he was telling the story of I believe a lady from Africa who had went missing for 4 years, and she just walked back into her home one day, and when she came back, everybody's like, "Where have you been?" And she says, "I was taken captive. I wasn't harmed, but I was made to bear children over the last several years, and I've bore many, and it was with an underwater aquatic race of people that lived in an underwater city." She talked about. She went into very great detail of what she experienced, everything about them, too much so that she, it could have been fabricated. So she was gone for years making children with them because they needed to hybridize, because they needed new DNA in their bloodline.
Right.
Now, before we go any further, we want to jump into our first call this evening, and we'll see how this goes. We're going to try to make a call to a gentleman who has a story to share with us. Let's see if we can reach him.
And thank you also for for sharing your story, whoever you are, stranger.
Yes, Alex, we appreciate you sharing your story, and we hope that we were able to give some insight on that. All right, we are trying our first phone call this evening. And I believe Daniel's still back with us.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know what this thing's trying to do tonight.
It spawned a second call.
Yeah, it spawned a second. I don't know why. All I did was hit call to him. And I don't hear any ringing on his end. You know, folks, we love bringing you these call-in episodes, but I will be honest with you. I run 3 radio shows. I've done hundreds of episodes, and the most pain-in-the-ass episodes are the call-in episodes. But we like to do so because we love to hear from each and every one of you out there and to ponder on your experiences and to let you be a part of the show. But I will tell you, it's difficult. Let's see if he answers.
The person you are trying to reach is currently unavailable.
Well, that's not good.
Please leave a message after.
Dan, are you still with me, brother? See, now Dan's gone again. I'll tell you what, folks. In our last episode that we did, we actually didn't experience much problems with anything. But this episode, you know, it's been a little bit troublesome. But, you know, I told you that's kind of what we expected with things that have been going on lately. It's been very peculiar. Nothing has been working right. I would go into more grave detail, but at this time, I'm actually kind of doing some research myself. With some of the other sites that have been shut down on me. I mean, like Facebook, for example, shutting down 15 years of stuff of mine instantly with no reason behind why. It's very strange. So Daniel, I don't know if you can hear me. Daniel, are you still there? See, he's there. It's saying he's there. I hear nothing. Well, folks, hopefully this isn't a complete dud of an episode. If it is, I apologize. But once again, he's on the line. I can see the timer clicking on the phone call. He's just gone. I hear nothing. Well, we will try to call Daniel back. Waiting to see if he answers. Well, folks, now he didn't answer, so I don't know what the hell's happening at this point, but we do have, luckily, another story that I can share with you that came in from another listener, so while we're waiting to call the next person, I can read you a second story. Daniel, are you back with us?
Yes, I just spoke to our caller, and he wants to know if, when we have a minute, if we can search for his Skype ID by his email. Yeah, he also gave us an alternative Skype number to try as well.
Yeah, let me go ahead. What I'll do for privacy issues, folks, is I'm going to go ahead here. We'll attempt it at least. So let me mute Dan real quick, folks. And Dan, if you don't mind, read me off the Skype address. All right, so we're just trying to search him by name, folks. And let's see if it comes up with anything. I think it did, so let's see. Hello, is this Sean?
Yep.
Hi, Sean, how you doing? This is Frater Crow from Celestial Oddities Radio. How you doing this evening?
Not bad. How you doing?
Hey, not too bad. Dan, can you hear him? Oh, now we're probably losing Dan. We've been having some crazy issues, Sean, which we normally don't have, and I've been telling the listeners out there that something strange has been going on. So let's see if we can get Daniel back now.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's been very, very peculiar. So let's see if we can. I'll just do this. We'll do. Let's see if we can add someone to your call. The listeners out there are probably like, "What in the hell is happening?" Last episode we had calls, and not our very last episode, but last call-in episode, it ran smooth as could be, and now for some reason this one just does not want to. So let's see if I can click. Add participant, we'll add Dan. There he is. All right, let's see. Dan, can you hear us? Daniel, are you there, sir?
It's me.
It's
me.
All right, can you hear each other? Dan, can you hear Sean?
Yes.
And Sean, can
Awesome.
you hear Dan?
Yeah.
All right,
Yes.
beautiful. Well, thank you, folks out there listening, and for your patience. This might be a repetitive issue that we have this evening, and I don't know why, but we will jump back into it. So if you don't mind, sir, why don't you feel free to tell us who you are, or whatever name you want to go by. I know I already said your first name, but you don't have to tell us more than that. Why don't you tell us where you're from and tell us your experience? We would love to hear it.
Yeah. So my name's Sean, as you mentioned. I am from Olympia, Washington. I actually am a longtime friend of Dan Man here, and we went to high school together. But we're, separated by an entire continent, so it's not very often that we get to see or talk to one another anymore. But, still, I consider him a good friend of mine.
Oh, good. No, that's good to hear that you guys have history with one another and that you've known each other since you were young. And, I know being from Washington, there is a lot of activity in that side of the country, especially that state. So Dan didn't tell me anything about your encounter, so I look forward to hearing what it is that you faced.
All right. So, first off, just want to say that my experiences are simply just high altitude lights. So nothing outrageous or anything crazy like that. I wish I could say that I had something a little bit more exciting, but still, intriguing stuff nonetheless, hopefully. My first exciting that I saw was back in 2017. I was actually going to there's this all-female AC/DC cover band called Hell's Bells, and they were playing the Southwestern Washington Fair, and a buddy of mine dragged me along. I didn't really intend on going, but I was like, oh, whatever, good times, beer, and hanging out with friends, that's always good times. So I decided to take him up on that, and it wasn't dark. It was probably early evening. There were not really too many clouds in the sky. And as the band was playing, I'm not sure what it was, but there was like a blinding light above me, and I'm not sure why, what compelled me to look up, because, the band was playing. That was kind of the focus of my attention at this point, but for whatever reason, I was compelled to look up, and I saw 3 lights. I'm not sure about how far in the sky, maybe, I'm not sure, probably less than 30,000 feet in the air. Definitely, probably way lower. It was definitely below what would be the cloud kind of ceiling, as it were. So it's 3 lights that were blinking kind of in succession from left to right. I forget the exact color, but it was like green, blue, and white, and it kept going like blink, green, blue, white, green, blue, white, and it was just hovering there, and I was like, that's kind of odd. I wasn't really focusing on it too much. Your brain, when you see something like that, you just immediately cast it away. You're like, oh, that must be a drone. And so I went back to looking at the band, and for whatever reason, decided to look up another 5 minutes later, and it was still there. And then it it started moving, and it started going down, further down the fairgrounds, and probably to the southeastern part of the fairgrounds, and it just stopped. And when it moved, the thing that I thought was kind of odd was, kind of preface it by saying I'm obviously not a pilot, and I'm certainly not an expert with like physics or anything. I'm actually a background investigator that works for a tribe, but so definitely don't have any sort of credentials as far as being an expert with physics or anything like that. But I'm kind of a nerd. I enjoy learning about that type of stuff. And so the movement of the three lights, it seemed to start and stop kind of abruptly. There was no inertia in terms of like slowing down. It just would go from one fixed part of the sky, go to another and hover. And then it kind of did that for a good 45 minutes, going from one part to another. And again, as I'm looking at it, your brain, there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance, but you explain it away as being a drone or something, because you're not seeing anything that's like outrageous. You're not seeing anything that's like instantaneous, fast acceleration travel, speeding off into the distance or whatever. It's stuff that's just kind of uncanny. So I just kept watching it for a good 45 minutes. It finally dipped behind the horizon, and so I went back to watching the band, and then after a while it started to pop back up from the horizon. And so I was just watching it for a good well over an hour. And like I said, it was evening, but it wasn't dark. It certainly, I could see the mountains at the edge of the horizon. There weren't clouds in the sky, or there weren't any low clouds, maybe high clouds. So I'm not sure what the visibility would have been that day, but so it was just kind of an uncanny thing. And I, like I said, explained, just put it away in my mind, didn't really think much about it. And for about 3 days, I was just battling with myself. It's like, is this a drone? Not a drone. It's a drone, not a drone. And so I just did a little bit of digging around to see, if commercial drones would even be allowed to be in that airspace, considering that there's military installation due north, there's commercial airstrips both due north and south. And so I contacted Port of Olympia, and they couldn't really tell me anything, but they pretty much not in so many words said that there was no air traffic that evening. And as far as commercial drones go, it would be illegal to operate in that airspace so close to both, commercial airstrips. So, I decided to, maybe 3 days later, contact MUFON, and they opened up a file and took, interview, and I kind of explained what happened, what I saw. And so it's actually under case, the MUFON case 117458. And I gave them a detailed explanation of everything I saw, and they determined, going back to the whole notion of it possibly being a drone, Dan might be able to chime in a little bit on this, because I know that he flies drones for cameras, but your average commercial drone can really only be in the air for maybe 45 minutes, an hour tops. Military drones can actually stay in the sky, I forget, up to like 36 hours. However, those military drones, their method of flight is more of a what's the word I'm looking for? It's more of a conventional method of flight. There's wings, and it doesn't have the means of staying in a fixed part of the sky. I've also, in my life, I've been on a helicopter, 3 times in my life, not very many times, but I grew up on an island in Alaska. So I kind of I've been in the sky, either on plane or helicopter numerous times in my life. So I kind of have a feel of how an aircraft would operate, how it would feel in the sky. And there was just something really uncanny about these 3 lights that all kind of hovered in tandem. So when I contacted MUFON, they determined, based on everything that I explained, they determined that it was unknown / UAV, unidentified aerial vehicle. So that was the case. Disposition for that particular case. So that was the first instance back in 2017. Hopefully that'll make sense. We good with that thus far?
No, I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, I've gotten reports, and Dan and I have gotten reports, not only of lights together, obviously strange in the sky, but we've also gotten reports where lights have traveled together and then independently moved apart from one another, where it was like the 3 were one vehicle or one craft, but then became several crafts and then came back together as if they were able to link but also separate. So it's very interesting to see that you've seen something hovering for that long, almost as if it was observing the concert, kind of curious as to what was going on.
Yeah, it was very, very odd. Like I said, it was uncanny, and I like to think of myself, I mean, I'm sure a true skeptic probably wouldn't think I'm a skeptic, because I'm like X-Files, like I want to believe, but at the same note, I tried to stay as objective of an observer as possible. And because of that, I ended up questioning myself, or basically just doubting myself for a number of days. And, I wish I would have taken video of it or something, but I assumed that maybe if someone else, hopefully in that fairground, somebody else would have seen it, if it was something that was really just something that was worth documenting, that somebody else would do that. But I guess people were just too focused either on the concert or focused on the rise in the fair, or moreover, just looking at their phones to not really look up at what was directly above them. So it's kind of disappointing that there's no video of that. But it was kind of an interesting thing, and definitely something that I had to experience quite a bit of cognitive dissonance in my either doubting myself or trying to make note of the fact that it was something that was actually intriguing and unique, I guess, for no better term.
Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Well, Sean, I want to thank you very much for sharing this story, and it's really fascinating to me, especially coming from you, a long time friend of mine. I can say that I absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, have seen the same thing. I've seen a variety of different shapes and sizes of lights like that throughout the country, because I've been to all of the pretty much all the bordering states in the United States, and I've seen those lights everywhere. But what I can confirm and corroborate is that in Washington State, I had never in my life.
Oh, Dan, I think you broke up.
Around the greater Olympia, Washington.
Sorry, you broke up. You broke up for a minute. You said never in your life did you what?
Never have I seen more of those lights than in Washington State. In the greater Olympia, Washington area throughout, my teens and into my 20s. So I would just say, without a shadow of a doubt, you absolutely had what I call a synchronized, encounter with an extraterrestrial race. And what I also tell people when they do see lights like that, or even sometimes often like a full-bodied craft that they'll see, is that these aren't fluke. They're not coincidence. They're oftentimes synchronized events that you're meant to see for a reason that you might not consciously be able to unpack in terms of like a download of information and energy, but you probably that was a synchronized or orchestrated meeting between you and this race, because clearly it was putting on a show for you, for lack of a better analogy. You were at a concert, but the way that it sort of displayed itself and with the colors, it was too intentional for it to be a coincidence or a fluke. And so I often tell people when they have these experiences, if you have to ask, was this real? Was it an alien? Then the answer is yes. And so I'm really excited for you, honestly, and I want to congratulate you on that experience, because it doesn't happen to everybody. And I also love the fact that nobody else really seemed to see it. See, the way I perceive things is that actually adds more value, in my opinion. I think it makes it more unique, more succinct, and more special. That it was something that you were able to experience. You were in the right state of being. Your frequency, your energy was in the right place at the right time to experience something special that other people didn't see. And I know that oftentimes, everybody is a little bit of a scientist in terms of needing some sort of proof, needing some sort of evidence that they can really anchor into and say, okay, here is what that means scientifically to me. I had a cosmic experience, and here's the data. But we're not always going to have data. So sometimes what I want to leave you with is the thought of choice. Think about it in terms of choice. So if you don't spend the rest of your night looking for proof, don't spend the rest of your life looking for data, but lean into how special that experience was for you and how literally out of this world and bizarre it was, because it truly is very big and bizarre. And then I'll leave you with choice. So will you ever find the proof or the data that it was something from another world? Probably not. Maybe, but maybe you also don't need to, and you can choose for yourself. What do you think that was? In your heart of hearts, in your intuition, in your inner voice, what do you think it was? And then you can choose the answer for yourself as well too. I can tell you that I absolutely believe that you had an extraterrestrial experience, but ponder on what I'm saying, that you can choose. What does it mean to you without the data? If you had to choose without any evidence, and you could choose, it was a weather balloon, or it was, the Pleiadians, what would you?
I think Dan, you cut out right at the end, but I think the point was, what would you choose?
What would you choose?
There you go. You're back. You disappeared there for a second, but we still heard your point there. And no, I think that's very strong and very important that, like you said, Dan, it's not always about having the backup of other people seeing it. Especially for myself, I go out and investigate haunted locations around the country alone. And a lot of people say, well, you don't want someone else to be there? I'm like, no, those personal moments that no one else can verify other than my own are the ones that stick with me the most. So, Sean, thank you for sharing with us your story and your encounter. Ponder on it longer, because if you stare at the sky long enough, there's a good chance you'll have another experience very similar. They are out there, and they like you to see them.
To that end, I actually have, if I still have time, if I have the floor, I have one more just this year that I saw. Which do we have time for that?
Yeah, throw it out there real quick for us.
Fantastic. Yeah. So earlier on this year, I'm going to try to be brief because my brevity is not my strong suit. I'm sure that Dan can probably corroborate that. But Cliff Notes version, went out to my backyard. I was making s'mores with my kiddo. It's weird calling him kiddo because he's 14 years old, high school. And he went back inside. I was laying on the grass and looking up in the night sky. It was around 10:15 at night, and I saw high altitude lights. It was, like I said, completely dark, so I couldn't make out any specific details other than at least one, but possibly more lights. But I was fixed at one light that kept going from one fixed location to another, and it would look like a star, but it would go from, to the left, stop, go back to the right, stop, go back to the left, stop, go back to the right. And I actually texted my son. I was like, hey, can you come out here? I'm looking at lights that are looking at, they kind of have some unusual flight path activity. And he goes out, he looks at it for 3 minutes, and he's just like, nope. And he goes back inside. He's like, nope, don't want to, nope, don't care to It's like, that's weird, but nope. So I actually observed that particular light until about 4 a.m. And I followed it all through the sky. The interesting thing, so throughout that time of observing it for about 6 hours, I observed other lights. I saw at least 2 shooting stars. There was a number of air traffic. The interesting thing was about midnight, I could tell there was about probably a C-17 that flew from Lewis McChord Air Force Base, and it looked like it was going to the cap point of where the light ended up in the sky. And it took about 45 minutes for that C-17 to go to where that light ended up as it was moving throughout the sky. And it definitely didn't seem like an accident that the C-17 was heading specifically to this particular light. And it was really exciting that I was about to see that C-17 meet up with where that light was, but then clouds rolled in, and it obscured what I would have saw as the 2 lights, met in the, well, not the 2 lights, sorry, but the light and the C-17 met in the roughly the same airspace. And but after the clouds cleared, maybe 20 minutes, I saw the same light again, and it was moving back to the north. And I continued to observe it for, like I said, another 3 hours. And then I went out the night. Oh, and by the way, I did actually report this to MUFON, and that was case number 124539. They also determined that it was their disposition was unidentified, UAP. But I went out the very next night just to see if there was any other weird things going on. And after a while of looking at it, up at the sky, I saw a couple of very weird things. I saw 2 lights that were moving in parallel, and then they stopped. And if you hadn't seen them move at the same time, they were fairly far apart, but they were moving parallel. They stopped at the same time. So if you hadn't seen them both stop at the same time, you would have just been like, oh, they're just stars. And I actually have 2 videos of blinking lights. It was a blinking blue to red, and it was like this one larger dot of blue and then an offshoot of a blinking red. So I actually have a short video of that particular light in the sky. I could actually share it with you guys if you care to at some point in time, if this is ever put up and saved, or however you guys would want to share that. But I have a short video of that. So that I thought was kind of interesting. But the last thing that I'll say, at that same night, as I was watching this blue and red blinking light, I noticed that there was a secondary aircraft that had, I couldn't really tell the shape of it. It probably was a smaller a boomerang drone type aircraft that had 3 faint lights, and it actually went up and down our neighborhood from like one point of Olympia all the way up to Boston Harbor, and then came back down. And I observed it going back and forth probably a good 4 times. It looked like it was either searching for something or it was like scanning, observing. So it was very, very, very weird object, and they actually flew directly over my house. It did not make any sort of noise, and if I hadn't seen specifically where it was and kind of kept an eye on it, I probably would not have noticed it, because it was much smaller than the other lights, and it was kind of a dimly lit aircraft. So very, very, very weird. But the interesting thing, when I contacted MUFON about this particular incident, they had mentioned that there was, the same weekend, somebody else reported similar lights up in Snoqualmie Pass the same weekend. So there were at least one other individual that saw the same set of lights in roughly the same area.
Well, it's good to hear that you got the confirmation with someone else seeing that one, whereas the first experience you did not. This, you had corroboration there from someone noticing something strange in the sky. And what I would say about that before we wrap up here would be that I've noticed patterns between military planes and UFO sightings, either that the UFOs are there because of the military planes, or the planes could have been going out to try to see what these unidentified flying objects are. There was a guest on the Joe Rogan podcast who was a military pilot who'd say that he and his crew would go up and they would bump into these things all the time. It wasn't a rare occurrence. They had updated new sonar, or radar rather, and they, with this new type of radar, started noticing vessels in the sky all the time, and they would actually start visibly seeing them from time to time and pass them. And they said sometimes they were up there for 12, 13 hours straight, and they didn't seem to have to land. They could just stay in the sky for very, very long periods of time, well beyond any type of military plane. So, no, very interesting that you noticed that for that many hours on end, and that it was doing strange patterns, other flying objects in the sky around it, all very reminiscent of other stories that we've heard where there usually is more than one object up there. Like they have different types of planes. Maybe one is a scout, another one is the main vessel. It is peculiar.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, any last thoughts before we wrap up the call?
No, Sean, I just want to thank you very much for being on the show. I think it's really cool to get you on here and hear your stories. And being your friend, I'd never known that you'd had these encounters. And I just really want to leave you with my own personal opinion is that I feel like they're synchronized, organized encounters that you were meant to see.
I agree. I mean, especially the second one. I mean, to see the first one, okay, that was very important because you were the only one that's seen it. But then to have another one so profound of hours of visual experience there, and then as we said, someone else seen it as well. Dan mentioned earlier, usually there's a reason. It sounds so obscure to say, oh, they wanted me to see them. It's just me. There's billions of people on this planet, and it's just me. But what was the reason you looked up that night? Something caught your attention to do so, and I think it was probably beyond your own awareness. Something caused you to look. A lot of times people that have these experiences were called without even realizing they were. So as Dan said, thank you so much, Sean, for sharing your experience. I'm sure if the listeners out there are listening in, have had a similar experiences, they can certainly attest to what you went through. And if you have out there, folks, please leave us comments, leave us messages. Sean, if you ever want to share that video with us, there is Celestial Oddities Paranormal Guys podcast Facebook group page. Unfortunately, I can't have much interaction with it anymore because I got booted from Facebook for life. But you can go on there and no, that's all right. It was probably inevitable. And you can go on there and drop that video for our group there. People do like to interact with one another and see different pieces of evidence out there. So feel free to drop that. And other than that, we wish you to have a great rest of your night, and we really appreciate you coming on.
Fantastic. I appreciate the time. It was great to share that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, if you ever have any more experiences, please let us know. And as always, keep an eye on the sky. There's a lot more up there that we just don't know, and I'm sure you'll have more experiences throughout your life.
I certainly hope so. I feel fortunate that I saw at least two. It sounds like Dan had a lot more. But like I said, I feel very, very extremely fortunate that I had two, because there were some people that even the MUFON investigators I had talked to, they said they never saw anything themselves. So I definitely feel extremely fortunate. And those who are lucky enough to have witnessed anything like that, I hope they consider themselves fortunate as well.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you shared it with us. We always appreciate it, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Take care.
All right, take care. All right, Dan, are you still with me?
I am still with you.
Oh, Christ. Okay. At least we're making that much further into the evening. I wasn't sure if it was going to click you off again. So the second one here, we're going to try to reach out to the second caller. I'm going to have to do it as we talked earlier, Dan, probably through the actual phone and hold it up to the microphone. The rest of them will be through Skype, so we should hear crystal clear. On this one, I just don't know any other way to try to do it.
Yeah, guys, I may not be able to hear what's happening, but I'm with you in spirit.
Let's try one other thing real quick. No, it's not going to let me do that. Okay. I was just trying to trick the system real quick. So let's make this phone call and see if we can reach this caller. And I will do my best to have you hear this, Dan. I'm going to move my pop filter out of the way so it might sound a little bit different, guys. And let's make the phone call. Can you hear that?
Yeah, I can. Yes, I can.
Oh, sweet. We might be in action.
Hello.
Hello, this is Frater Crow with Celestial Oddities Radio. How you doing this evening?
I'm doing wonderful. How are you?
Hey, not too bad. We wanted to thank you for coming on the show this evening. Obviously, I have Daniel with me, and we wanted you to feel free to introduce yourself however you would like, and feel free to tell us your story. We would love to hear it.
Absolutely. So I guess my question is, I'm not even sure exactly which stories you're looking for.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you want to pick out two of the most profound experiences you had and share them, we would love to hear them.
And are we talking about supernatural profound experiences or spiritual profound experiences?
So you've had multiple. Okay, so we get a selection to pick from. I would say let's stick with the supernatural this evening. So things that are just very obscure and unexplained.
So my name's Karma, and I live in Arizona. I live in northern Arizona, and I come from a line of, I guess, sensitives. Some people would call them psychics, but, I just kind of refer to that as sensitive and kind of just tapped in. And, like growing up, my grandmother could always say, exactly who was calling before, the phone even rang. And this is in the day before caller ID. My granddad was very, very good at knowing where water was. You could call him a water witch or a dowser. And so, paranormal things were never foreign to us. I guess to us it was just always normal. But for me, I've always been able to see people who have passed on but are, still walking among us. So I just call them, the non-bodied people is what I refer to them as. And since I was a kid. And so basically, as I've gotten older, and I'm in my 40s now, obviously when you can see them and they walk among you, you can oftentimes see the ones who are causing trouble or, creating problems. And so that's kind of been one of those closet superpowers for me, is learning how to move them along or mitigate some of the crazy paranormal activity that happens with, certain types of entities. And so that's kind of where I'm at, is kind of on retainer with a lot of the realtors, especially in downtown Prescott, where the houses are 100 to 150 years old. They have a lot of inhabitants that don't necessarily inhabit a body anymore.
That's interesting. I read an article recently about someone who works in the realty field for inhabitants of homes that no longer are currently living in the normal sense, and does very similar work, and it's the first time I've ever come across that. So to hear a synchronicity of a second person in about a week and a half say something of the same nature is interesting.
Oh, wow. Well, and I don't know too many people who hang a shingle outside their door and say, this is what I do.
Well, yeah, usually it's not something we announce publicly.
Right, exactly. And so for me, it just kind of happened where there was a house that was kind of well known in the area for having, inhabitants that they couldn't quite get rid of, and that for some people were very problematic. And I went to look at this particular house, not knowing that history, but definitely looking for a rental house in town. And the house was very inexpensive, and I thought, wow, this is perfect for me and my family, and, right in our budget, and how is it so cheap? And I walked in, and I was like, oh, this is very inhabited. And I asked around a little bit, and one of my real estate clients, that completely unrelated actually, just basically said, oh, I don't know that you want to rent that house, Karma. That house has quite the reputation. And I'm like, well, too late. I already signed the lease. So it definitely was probably one of the most interesting experiences that I've had, though, because this house was almost like a magnet for about every spirit, within a 1 mile radius, I'm guessing, because we had transient spirits that would come and go. We had a spirit that took up residence in the house, and another one that came and kind of threw down the gauntlet and was kind of like, yeah, make me leave. And that was a very interesting experience, because that particular one was one that was very good at hiding. It was very, very good at, and I could not see it. I could see evidence of it. I could see when things would happen, but I couldn't see the spirit himself, and he was just very, very good at hiding himself. But, he still, in the end, ended up leaving.
No, that's interesting. There are spots that seem to be not only hot spots for activity, but seem to be almost like doorways themselves where spirits of all different natures, come to use that location as some sort of transport, almost like a subway, like a supernatural subway. And sounds like you got to stay there for a while and really get to experience that.
I did, and I will have to say that that's actually how I got into clearing houses, is because that house, definitely cleared all of the problematic spirits. I left the one that was very peaceful and very quiet, and she was actually quite lovely, but definitely got rid of the ones that opened the cabinet doors, that turned on the water in the middle of the night, would turn on the lights, would throw things around the house. Definitely got them to move along, and then all of a sudden the realtors were like, wait a minute, that house isn't, we don't want to say the H word, but that house isn't haunted anymore. Like, what's going on? And so that's just kind of how I got into doing that, because as the word spread, hey, this house was cleared, then another, kind of notorious house was cleared, and then another one was cleared, and then, I just kind of got put on retainer by a couple of them.
That's interesting. I mean, did you ever expect... obviously this being something that's within your family, having different abilities, did you ever expect with your abilities that you would get to do it for an income?
I didn't. Not at all. In fact, I was clearing houses for probably 4 or 5 years before I ever actually admitted to anyone openly that I did readings also. So it was, I guess, a lot less scary to do that on the down low and stay in the broom closet than it was to let people know, hey, yeah, come here, and messages can be passed through too. But I never in a million years thought it would be something that would be, part of what I do for a living.
No, that's interesting. And it found you. Not only did your gift find you, but I mean, it's funny that it was able to land you a career within that field. And it's so often that the spirits do have greater plans for us than we realize, and sometimes pull us along into the right path of where we're supposed to be.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I basically was in the beauty business for, about 15 years before that happened. And that when I said a client of mine, I literally meant I was doing her nails while she was telling me about it. So it was very interesting to then, shift into this, this kind of new way of being and operating, and really being able to utilize the gifts that run in my family, for a good purpose.
No, and I love that. I love to see people not only using their gifts, but being able to use it for good, and not only to help themselves, but others. So that's very admirable, and I thank you for doing so. Now, Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add? And we're doing this a little strange tonight, Karma. The calls have been doing, the last couple weeks of the show, it seems like any technical difficulty that could happen has been happening. Like the powers that be don't want us to air all these truths. So this call this evening is a little bit different than we normally do. So I'm going to see if you can hear Dan. You should be able to. Dan, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, are you able to hear me okay?
I am, yeah.
Awesome. Hi. Thank you so much for, responding to our call and joining us on the show. We love to meet people like you and get involved and hear your stories. And I also really love that, this kind of seems like it's a family affair, that your gifts run in your family, and that you're taking action on those and integrating them into your life. So I really respect that and appreciate that about you. I just want to thank you for doing your work that you do.
Oh, you're welcome. Absolutely. I think it's one of those things that I can't not do anymore.
Right. Sometimes with the intuitives like us, it's not almost not even a choice, right? Whether or not you want to do it, it seems to come into your life, and then there are opportunities, circumstances for you to take action on, and then all of a sudden, a few years later, it's like integrated. It's like a part of your life now, and I totally get it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what this has become. It's an everyday part of my life.
Now, you said you've had other experiences as well, so obviously this has become a career path for you, but what other experiences have you had that might be besides the normal, I don't want to say normal, but to us normal visualizations and experiences you've had with, like you said, you hate to say the H word, but hauntings and ghosts. What else have you ever had that's just been completely peculiar and bizarre that you haven't been able to explain?
Well, so I had a very interesting experience. A friend of mine is very much also very, very sensitive, very gifted, and she speaks to spirits on the regular. In fact, I would have to say she's probably a little bit more attuned than I am to certain frequencies. And she and I just did a girls' trip. We wanted to get out of town, and we wanted to go and just, experience part of the Verde Valley here in Arizona because it's just beautiful. And we ended up in a town called Jerome. And I don't know if you've heard of that, but Jerome is one of the ghost towns in Arizona that has kind of made a boom, a recovery and a bounce back. It's a very touristy place, and it's known for being a ghost town. And we decided we were going to go to the really, really old cemetery that most people didn't really know about, and just kind of walk around. I mean, it's just a quiet place that, for the most part is pretty quiet. And that day it wasn't. That day we walked into the cemetery. We left our offering for the gatekeeper, and we were just kind of browsing around and just looking at the sights. It's amazing. It's breathtaking. If I have to be interred anywhere, that would be it, because it looks right over all of Sedona and the Red Rocks, and we're just there and being present. And this presence kind of just appeared out of nowhere for her, and I wasn't seeing him and I wasn't hearing him. And he started, explaining to her his story and how his story has gotten forgotten. And he was just, kind of had a chip on his shoulder because people come and pay their respects, but never to him. It was a piece of history that, he was someone who got forgotten. And so he was telling his story, and as he was telling his story, he was leading her down a hill that was kind of away from the cemetery and showing her parts and pieces of what used to be his house. And, she was really asking him, how long ago was this? And he really wasn't super helpful with telling the story. And she kept saying, we'd love to tell your story. You got to tell us. And he began using a term that she really didn't particularly appreciate when referring to me. And he was referring to me as a half-breed. And he kept saying, well, send the half-breed over there. She can tell you. And, so she was kind of arguing about, the not-so-nice words. But we walked that direction anyway, and we got to an area where it drew me like a magnet. It literally pulled me kind of from the belly button space forward. And with her, it repelled her. She just stopped and said, I can't go over there. I just can't go over there. The energy is, no, I can't go over there. And so I kept walking because I felt really compelled and drawn to this space. And I probably walked about 100 feet away from her and just kind of closed my eyes, settled my energy into the ground, and just opened up the channel and said, show me what it is that needs to be seen. And it was about a 24-hour window that it was like watching a movie. The sun was high in the sky, and I saw everything that happened. And it was a piece of history. It was, U.S. Army riders came up over the hillside, and they surprised a family of Yavapai. And the family was there, and they had a specific purpose. And the riders came over the hill, and they killed the entire family. And they threw them over the hillside. They even killed the horse that the family had there with them and threw it over the hillside. And there was a young boy riding with them. And that young boy ended up being the spirit that was talking to my friend. And through watching this like 24-hour period of this, the sun getting higher, then sinking lower, watching the riders, circling around this family's fire that, this family that's now dead and over the side of the hill, and this young boy just watching all of this horrified. And in the middle of the night, he snuck out. He took the family that was, lying dead there on the hillside, and he buried them, every single one of them. And the next morning, the riders were angry with him, and they ended up telling him he was going to stay there and wait for the next, round of riders to arrive. And they actually abandoned him. And he lived there, and he created a home because he couldn't handle living in the home of the family that had been murdered. he created a home on the other side, and that's what he had been showing my friend. And it was this super intense, just feeling all of the emotions, feeling the feelings, smelling the smells, seeing the sights. And then at the end of this, the sun goes down again, and boom, I'm back in my body, back where I was. And my friend is, pacing now because I've been there so long. And she goes, Karma, that was the weirdest thing. I could hear sounds. I heard gunshots. I heard screams. I could smell fire. She goes, and I could see nothing. And so I filled in the blanks with the story. And we put our heads together. And I have grown up here in Arizona. And everything that I saw didn't make sense because there was no history about any of the Yavapai tribe living where we were standing. There wasn't any information anywhere. And so she and I did some research, and about 4 or 5 days later, we came upon a book, an obscure book out of California, and it was an anthropologist who'd written about the Yavapai and Apache alliance and how the Yavapai in this particular area where we had been standing used signal fires to signal the Apache. And it was an alliance between the tribes that was really mostly forgotten. And it was really cool to be able to tell their story and to really tell the story of the people who nobody really remembered anymore.
No,
so that's probably one of the craziest ones.
No, I think that's very profound. I mean, the fact that not only did you have this amazing experience and visualization, audible experience, but you were able to back it up with historical fact that it wasn't easily able to come by the first few days, but then you found it from another state that corroborated the fact of what it is that you've experienced. But what a saddening but also just powerful experience that he was able to share with you what he's seen through his eyes at that time, and also in doing so let you know more about him and his story, which is what he wanted. He just wanted someone to remember him.
Exactly. Yeah. And how he had lived there long before any of the other settlers came through. And I mean, he'd lived his entire life there alone.
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah, I mean, he got to see such horrors, as a boy, and then spend his life alone in that hillside. I could understand why he would have so much resentment and power behind him. When you have that much sorrow, a lot of times, see, Daniel works heavily with UFOs and aliens, and on my end, I work heavily with the paranormal as far as ghosts and hauntings. And I've noticed that those who have suffered great sorrow in their life that are still around with us seem to have the most power when it comes to projecting to sensitives. And obviously he had gathered up quite a large amount of power.
Oh, definitely. And what was interesting is that he very much resonated with my friend's energy. And it was interesting, too, how once I tapped into the energies of the earth, being part Native American, and that's kind of where it was interesting because he kept saying, send the half-breed, and my friend, she's like, that's not something nice to say. We don't say that anymore, And, aligning with those energies, and what was really amazing about that experience is it really opened me to this part of my heritage that, until that point, I was really largely turned off from. My grandmother really kind of left the tribe, and we really had no familial heritage that, was teachings of the old ways. And it really sparked a desire for me to find someone who was a teacher and who could, help guide me into tapping into the energies of that part of my heritage, that DNA that lived inside of me, because clearly that spirit felt it. And the land and the spirits that were there, they felt it. And so it's something, it definitely changed my practice as well. And it's been about 7 or 8 years now since that happened. And, it's just become, part of my everyday, the piece of honoring that part of my heritage.
And Daniel and I were just speaking with the last caller about the fact that a lot of these experiences we don't believe happen by mistake. They happen not only because he wanted to be heard and seen, but also for the fact of how it would change your practice, whether even this spirit understood that or not. certain stars are aligned in ways to change our paths on a multifold progression. So what I mean by that is, obviously you were able to help him because he was able to then elaborate his story to the two of you. But then in doing so, it did trigger and change your path and your practice, which I think ultimately needed to happen as well. So it's very interesting that it was twofold.
Yes, it was.
And Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Well, the synchronicities like that are always there. And this, circumstance manifesting for you to experience and go through, like Frater said, seems to have been very significant and specific for you. And so I just wanted to leave you with the question. I wondered by chance, so when you sort of tap into these little stories, these little moments in a spirit's life that you tap into because you're an intuitive and you're sensitive, and you get a reading on the circumstances and the backstory of what happens to these people, what do you do specifically with that information in terms of, like, how do you take action and maybe help them, or in what ways, do you use these experiences?
Well, I definitely communicate with them. I ask them, what it is that they want to show me? What is it that they need to have known, and why? And with him, he was very clear. He was very, very clear that he wanted his story told, and he didn't want to disappear for all time. It was like he felt like if he just stayed forgotten forever by everybody, that that was kind of his purpose, was so that he wouldn't be forgotten, and that story would be told. And what was interesting is that then sparked more interest into that Yavapai-Apache alliance, and people have been looking into that. And, so it inadvertently didn't just tell his story, he told the story of the families, and he told the story of, really the history of that Verde Valley. And so that history lives on, that most people had forgotten about. And, I've had an experience also with a family in Prescott again. They were digging up a street in downtown Prescott near Citizen Cemetery, and that was a Catholic cemetery back in the day. And there was a family of, I know it's going to sound cheesy, but like redheads that basically reminded me a lot of like the Harry Potter movie from like the Weasley family. And I'm on my morning run through downtown Prescott, and these 4 people are looking down in this hole that that had been left for the weekend by the construction crew. And I just thought, oh, that's odd, so I slowed down to a jog and kind of was looking, and one of them looked up, and it's unmistakable, the look on their faces when they realize someone sees them. And it was the mom, and she said, they always do, she sees me. And it was like, from that point forward, I had this little like Pied Piper entourage with me, because they had decided to stay with their bodies when they died of influenza. And they, the bodies were dug up during the new water lines that had been being laid, and they were moved. And so these spirits were kind of standing there puzzling what to do next. And, it took a little bit for me to understand why they decided to follow me around for a while. And it was really because they didn't know what to do, and they didn't know where they could go, because, they weren't Catholic. That was a Catholic cemetery. They couldn't go there. And it took a little bit to coax them into, realizing, yes, you can. You can go there if that's where you want to, rest, or if you want to cross over, that's fine too. But it took, a good couple of weeks to get them convinced that, yes, they could go to the cemetery, and then ultimately from the cemetery, they trusted enough to know that they could cross over. And so oftentimes, understanding where they're coming from, what's holding them back, and then, showing them, hey, this is something you can do, and it's not, you're not facing this vengeful, horrible judgment on the other side. And that's really what I find keeps most spirits from crossing over, is the fear and the clinging to the belief they had, when they still had their body.
Well, it's the unknown. You find yourself in such a strange predicament that now the only thing you've ever really known is your body. Your body is no longer with you, and you're kind of scared, where do I go from here? And you know that you can cross over, but you're afraid of the unknown. What happens when I do? Will I completely dissolve? Will I be no more? Well, then if that's the case, maybe I want to just stick around here, but then you're almost trapped here. So it's kind of a catch-22 of I don't want to disappear, but I also don't want to feel like I'm forever stuck in this prison.
Right, exactly. And again, it's like kind of what people have told them would happen if they crossed, if they crossed between the veil into the next. And if they believe truly that that's going to be worse than where they're at, stuck there in the in-between, they definitely tend to just stay in the in-between because it is the known.
I agree. I've experienced that many times myself with spiritual interaction of spirits just kind of hanging and lingering in between and not sure how or if they want to move forward. So I appreciate the work that you're doing and helping them as I do very similar work. So thank you for what it is that you do, and thank you so much for sharing these stories with us this evening.
You're absolutely welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, not a problem. Well, we might even have you on again down the road because it sounds like there's probably a lot more that you haven't got a chance to talk to us about this evening, but we would love to hear it. But Daniel and I do want to thank you, though, for the experiences.
You're quite welcome. Have a wonderful night.
You as well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye. And Daniel, you are still with us, correct?
Yes, I am.
I'm going to ask that all night. Did you hear her quite clearly? Because I had to do that in a very strange way.
I was able to hear very clearly. I could make her out.
Good, because I'm holding it on speakerphone against the mic. And then what I would do is when you wanted to talk to her, you guys can't hear each other, so then I would take my headphones off and stick it on the phone. So she would hear you, and then when she would answer, I'd hurry up and pull the headphones away.
Dude, we got to figure this out, man.
No, it's strange, folks. If you're listening out there, like I said, our last call-in episode worked absolutely smooth, and every channel, there was no need to do any of this, but we are adaptable if nothing else. So let's go ahead and get ready for our third call. And Dan, you can feel free to jump in on this one as much as you would like. I do not know this individual. I came across her on Reddit, which is actually how I came across the next three individuals. And let me see if I can find her here. She had an experience of premonition, which is pretty profound. So I'll introduce myself whenever she answers, and then I'll let you take it from there if you'd like.
Sounds good.
All right, let's try to make the call.
Hello.
Hello, this is Frater Crow from Celestial Oddities, the Paranormal Guys podcast. How you doing?
I'm just fine. Good evening.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening for the show. I have my partner, Daniel James, here. We're going to make sure that he's able to hear you because we've been having some strange technical difficulties this evening. And actually for the last couple of weeks that something seems to be causing interruption during our shows, which is peculiar because we've been doing this for years and never had any issues until the last few weeks. But Daniel, are you there with me, my man? And of course he is not. So let's see what's going on here. So
okay.
Bear with me for one moment.
No problem. Hey, is there a way for me to use speakerphone with Skype on my phone?
I believe you can.
Okay, while you do that, I'll check this out.
Okay, perfect. And let me see if I can add him back to this again. So.
Okay.
All right.
I'm right here.
All right. So Daniel, where are you at, my man? All right, folks. Once again, I appreciate all your patience out there while I work on trying to get all of these things figured out. Daniel, are you with us? Seeing Daniel's gone again. I don't understand why it's doing that. It's never done this before. But that's okay. We'll get this figured out. So let me try one other thing here. We will do this.
Okay.
And we will do... All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're just going to disconnect Daniel altogether, if I can. Oh, you got to love it when it does strange things like this, especially during our live episodes, because we don't do recordings, we do live. So I think Daniel's messaging me right now.
Oh, I see it. I cannot seem to join the call.
Yeah, and I don't understand as to why. Well, folks, nothing but problems this evening, which is very peculiar. Add participants. Let's try add Danny again. Dan. And now it's not even giving me the option to try to add them. I'm telling you, it sounds like conspiracy theory, folks, but I'm telling you that someone has been messing and sabotaging my shows as well as my social medias, as I told you, completely deleted from Facebook, tried to shut down my Instagram, tried to shut down my other business accounts, and I have done nothing to warrant any type of thing getting shut down. The radio shows have been experiencing issues, and I'm not sure as to why. Now, see, I think now, Daniel, I can hear you, but I don't know if I can hear our caller. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can now.
See, and now you're back, but he's gone. It's like I was able to hear him for a moment. I don't understand.
Oh, no.
So, let's try one last thing here. And then if not, the show must continue with or without Daniel, only because I have you on the line and I will not waste your time. So we will try one last thing here.
Hello?
All right. So participants. There, we're trying to call Daniel back while on the phone with you, and we'll see if it works.
That's okay. Let's try it.
I'm telling him, hang up the current call that he's on and then answer.
My screen just went blue for a second.
Well, that's strange.
I was hoping maybe he was joining.
See, the thing is, it says he's on the phone call. So let's try this one last time. I heard him hang up.
Yeah, I can hear him hang up as well.
Yeah, it's and then like I said, it's not even giving me the option to add him back. So that's why I think it's something peculiar, because it should not act in such a manner. It is just very strange.
So you're doing a live show. Do you think you have any audience left after all the
Yeah, it's hard to
technical
say.
things?
Our fans are usually pretty cool about everything, so they understand things happen. Daniel, are you with us?
I'm with you.
You're with us. Jesus, I don't even know what's going on here tonight, my brother. It just doesn't even make sense. You were there, but it would not let you talk, and then it wouldn't let me try to add you back after you hung up. But needless to say, we have the caller on the line with us. Sorry for the audience out there. We apologize for these wild technical difficulties. I hate to beat a dead horse here, but I will apologize again. Caller, if you don't mind, feel free to introduce yourself however you would like, and then you can jump right into the experiences that you've had and that you would like to share with us.
All right. Well, I hope they stuck around because this is a crazy story. September 11th, 1991, I'm in bed. My husband and I were going to sleep. My eyes are closed. Then I know my grandmother, my late grandmother, she died about 20 years before. She's in the room, and she's standing next to Sharon, who was a cousin by marriage. I'd never met her, but she was standing next to my grandma, and she's holding a butcher knife in her hand by her side, just standing there with a butcher knife. And my grandma says to me, "Don't worry, sissy, everything's going to be okay." And then they were gone, and I opened my eyes, and I woke up my husband, and I told him what had happened. And I said, "Am I stressed about something? Am I anxious? I mean, I had a pretty good life." I didn't understand. My grandmother and I were very, very close. She lived next door to me, and she raised me practically. My parents both worked, and we were very close. But I'd never seen or heard my grandmother since she passed. And so the next day I went, and I also told my boss, because I was worried that. Now I'm worried, maybe what's wrong with me. 2 days later, my brothers were murdered. Friday the 13th, they were stabbed many, many times by a home intruder. And that, I guess, is what my grandma was trying to tell me. And I guess that's why Sharon was there. Sharon had been stabbed in 1969, and I guess that's the significance of the butcher knife. I didn't understand it. I did not know Sharon. I'd never met her, but I knew of her. But so it was a horrible time. It was as you can imagine, two of my brothers, they were 32 and 33 years old. We're all very close. So it caused quite a bit of depression in me. And so I think about 6 months later, my husband took me out to a really nice place for dinner. And we were waiting for our car the valet to come with our car. And this woman, out of nowhere, she's pushing a shopping cart. She looked like a homeless woman. She stopped right in front of me, looked at me and said, "Your brothers are okay." And I just, what the, can I say?
You can, no, we're unfiltered, so feel free.
What the fuck? And my husband was like, what the fuck was that? I think it's because, I don't know. I've never, I've had some things, but never like this. But I had been so distraught. I'd barely done anything except go to work. So I was, at this point of their death, I was very, very angry. I was very angry at them because they had not had their alarm turned on. And this is 1991. We lived in a small little town. No, there's no crime. None. There's no crime. And nobody locked their doors back then. And I was very angry at them. So, again, we're in bed one night. We're both asleep. I wake up. There's a woman at the end of my bed. I get up. I'm startled. And I'm shaking. I'm pushing my husband, wake up, wake up, wake up. I get up, and she says, "Your brothers are okay." And she was there, and she was live in person. My husband gets up, calls 911. They come. She says, she had just stumbled into our house by accident. And that was the craziest thing that I'd ever experienced. How did she get in my house? We were waiting for my daughter to come home. I'm sure the door was unlocked. I don't know. But she said to me, "Your brothers are okay." Both of them, exact words, "Your brothers are okay." So that is my story. And it's quite crazy. But that's what
very
happened.
Powerful. That's very powerful. I wonder by chance. Okay, so I just wanted to clear one thing up. It was two different women, two different people that approached you and said that same thing.
Two different times, two different women. One was an old lady pushing a cart. She darted out in front of me, looked at me, and said, "Your brothers are okay." About 3 months later, when I was in the anger phase, first you're in the grief phase, then now I'm in the anger phase. I was so mad. And then I think what they did was they wanted to show me how easy it was for that to happen, and you wake up and you're just dazed and confused. You don't know what's going on. So I think that was their way of telling me, this is why we did not defend ourselves. This is what happened. They were basically, one was murdered in his bed and one was murdered getting up after he heard the noise. So, yeah.
Now, obviously it was very bizarre, very strange. He maybe even feels uncomfortable and invasive, but did getting that message from your brothers through those people, did it help you? Did it ease you at all? Okay.
It did. It did help me. And they were real life people. They were, and that woman, we didn't press charges because she snapped me into realizing that it could happen, and you can wake up and you're kind of in a daze, and you're just not able to defend yourself. I froze when I saw this woman sitting at my bed. Unfortunately, my daughter had come home and the ambulance and the police were there and the lights were going. And of course, my daughter just freaked out before she got in the house. She was afraid something had happened to us. But yeah, and my husband my ex-husband, but he was there at both, he was there at both instances. And also my ex-boss, who I went to work and told her both times about both of them. So, it was very bizarre, and it's been a long time. It's been a long, long time. The guy was caught. He was just executed last month, actually.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Okay. So,
wow.
I mean, overall, very powerful story. And what's interesting is, as you said, the first experience was of a spiritual nature, preemptively letting you know that this was going to happen without you realizing what it was symbolic of. But then the second and third were physical people giving you these messages. So there was kind of a mixture of both sides of the veil communicating with you. I think beforehand, like we said, was your grandmother letting you know. And then I think the second and third sounds like it was your brothers letting you know, hey, we're okay. I mean, and they did it with whatever ways they could. And what they had at their disposal was these women, for one reason or another. Someone who wandered into your home and someone who was maybe living on the streets. They were able to use them as vessels to be able to say, hey, they are okay. And it made more sense for them to say they rather than we are okay, because that would have only been more confusing, I think.
Right. And they both said, well, the first one said your brothers are okay. The second one said they're okay.
Wow.
And I mean, I knew who she was talking about, but it completely disengaged me with the anger that I had been feeling. And I think that's what I think that was the purpose of that. I was quite distraught.
Oh, I would imagine. I mean, I can't imagine. And first and foremost, Daniel and I would like to extend our sympathies for your brothers. I mean, that is a horrific thing that I can't even begin to imagine.
It was a long time ago. And the woman standing next to my grandmother was actually Sharon Tate.
Oh, wow.
You had mentioned that. And for the listeners out there that don't know, Sharon Tate was a famous actress that was murdered, was the first victim of the Manson family when Charles Manson had his followers go out and wage war against Hollywood at that time and started killing people innocently and leaving cryptic messages because he wanted to start a race war, which is what the book Helter Skelter was written about. His first victim was in the Hollywood Hills, which would have been our listener's cousin. That is Sharon Tate. She was married to famous director Roman Polanski. If you're wanting to know more about this, you can read Helter Skelter. It gives you a very deep insight look into, unfortunately, a very dark period of American history, which was the Manson family crime. So I'm sorry, obviously, for your brothers, but also for Sharon, who you never got to meet. It's just sad to hear the tragedy that your family has faced.
Yeah, I knew her mom, and but Sharon was already in Hollywood, and when I was a young girl, I was 14 when she was murdered, but I couldn't understand why she was there holding a butcher knife. That didn't make any sense to me because I did not know her. I did not have a relationship with her, but the knife itself, that to me is very strange.
Well, it's very strange, because as you said, that is how, unfortunately, your brother's lives were taken, but also how she was taken.
Right.
Which is very strange. In both, obviously, and unfortunately, in very violent ways. So that really leaves, yourself, I'm sure, and certainly Daniel and I and our listeners out there, something to ponder on as the complexity of obviously all three of those occurrences that you experienced, but then also the connection between your brothers and Sharon and that visualization preemptively beforehand. That is intense.
Yeah, it is intense. So I'm glad I got to talk about it because it was, we don't discuss it much in my family. I have brothers. I had 5 brothers. I have 3 left, but they're men. They don't discuss it. The story of my brothers, it just does not come up.
Well, I think it's good to get it off your chest sometimes. I mean, I really feel it's helpful and it's healing to, whether it's not talked about often or not, at least from time to time, needs to be let out as it is healing. So we do thank you very much for sharing that with us. And certainly one of the stories that'll stick with me for quite some time and give me something to think about as I work heavily with the spiritual world. So it just makes me think of how much depth and endless possibilities there are with spiritual interaction and how they do communicate with us. Not everyone is able to see or hear them, but for those that can, sometimes they do carry very profound messages and insight.
Yeah, I think that I don't know anything much about the spiritual world except for those instances, those things that have happened to me, but they must want to come to you very, very desperately for them to be able to do that.
They do. I mean, it takes a lot of power to be able to breach the veil and be able to show yourself in one form or another. So the energy that was dispensed that night to let you know beforehand was large. And then for them to be able to communicate through 2 other individuals takes a lot of energy saved and used to be able to do that. So obviously you were a very important person in both your grandmother's life and your brother's life because they came through to you. So you might already be somewhat of a sensitive, but also I think it's more than that. I think that they were very, very close to you.
Yeah, we were very, very close. Yeah.
Well, no, that is fascinating, and I do want to thank you so much for sharing that. Daniel, any last thoughts?
No, I just also want to let you know that our show, our program that we have here is a safe place for people like you and stories like this to be shared. And I think that what you experienced was something special. And, thank you for being here and speaking with us.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry your time ran over. I hope you retain some of your audience because I'm sure you had some great stories.
Oh, no problem. Hey, we are adaptable. We still have a couple calls left this evening, so we'll see if we can reach...
well, you better let me go.
No, you're fine. But no, we're used to some strange things happening. Like I said, just not usually communication problems with the programs, but hey, that's okay. But we do obviously very much appreciate your call. And, we will certainly get it out there to the masses to hear this because I think it's important for them to hear.
Thank you so very much. You guys have a wonderful evening. I'm going to keep watching The Walking Dead.
Okay. Well, you have a wonderful rest of your night, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
What a fascinating story, Dan.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that, clearly, not only is it something that people don't want to talk about, but can't talk about, and maybe she hasn't talked about in so long. So I feel grateful to you and I both as a team to having a platform like this where people can come and sort of express themselves about circumstances and stories like that.
No, I do as well. I think it's very important what we do and how we can allow people to come on and discuss and just to, as you said before, accumulate knowledge and interactions of the different things that have happened so that we can dig further into the supernatural and paranormal to try to connect bridges between sightings and experiences and encounters to make more sense of it and breach further beyond the veil. So we'll continue to do that. If only this damn program or this whole show would sometimes work with us. And we're going to try, I'm trying something a little bit differently. So we're going to call our next caller, and I'm actually going to skip who was supposed to be next and go to the last guy because he's coming to us from Paris and it's late as hell there. And we're going to see if we can reach him. I don't know what his story is about.
Okay, do this though. I'm going to end this call that we're currently on right now on Skype because that was the issue before. I think that maybe Skype isn't letting me have more than one at the same time.
Well, let's try this first, and if not, in the last one we'll do that because I think I figured out some weird way around it. And if this works, you should just be right there. If not, hang up and I'll bring you back on. But let's try it. So let's add him to the call.
Okay.
And go to call. And there he is. Let's try to bring him on. Just trying to see if it's ringing. Do.
Ba, ba, ba. The soothing sounds of Frater Crow, everybody.
Oh, exactly. Next week, folks, or 2 weeks from now, we will be back with a regular deep dive episode, so you won't have to worry about the strangeness of the phone calls. But it is looking like it's trying to call our listener right now, so we'll see if it goes through. It's spinning. I'm telling you, it's very strange. I don't have any issues all throughout the day, and I use the internet all day long for work, and I work, I'd say 95% of the time from home. I have no connectivity issues ever. But the only 2 times I have recently was last week's episode and this week's episode. So it makes me wonder why.
Dude, it's because Halloween's in a few days, man.
I'm telling you, the veil
guys,
is
happy
thin.
Halloween, by the way.
Hey, happy Halloween, everyone out there. Happy Samhain.
Happy harvest.
Let's see. Let me try to call him again.
What do you guys?
Oh, is it gonna work? So now, folks, I don't even know what the hell that was. It started ringing on its own. I didn't even call him. Dan, you there?
I am now.
Yeah, this shit's freaking out, man. So I had tried calling him before, and it didn't seem to get anywhere with him. And then it just randomly started calling him without me even doing anything, and it clicked you back off. So I'm telling you, there's
They brought up Halloween, man.
You brought up Halloween, and it forces the beer. Like, nope, I don't think so. Well, all we can do is try to call him one more time. And this time I will try to initiate it.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens. I have both of you on here, 3 participants. Let's do the call. Can you still hear me?
I can.
So you're there, I'm here. Where the hell's he at?
His name is...
I have no idea. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Let's remove him and try to add him back in. Folks, at this point, I feel like you're just all out there hanging out with us as Daniel and I just chit-chat because this has been an absolute shitstorm. But the funny thing is, within this shitstorm has been some great stories. And that's what's a shame, is I don't want to take away from their stories because of the bullshit of this experience. Our last story, that's haunting. Not to be coy by saying that. I mean, it is haunting that... What a wild experience. And then, I mean, Sean experiencing the different lights in the sky and the aerial phenomena, and Karma telling us about profound indigenous spirits and the whole scene of the killing of that family. I mean, what wonderful stories. And when I say wonderful, obviously I understand some of it's dark. I'm saying wonderful is just profound.
But this is the field that we work in, and these are the types of topics that we discover. This is what we're interested in. This is what we're trying to get out there. So, in terms of like the genre of our show, no, this is perfect.
It is, absolutely. And I'm going to try to call this gentleman who I knew had an experience he wanted to share with us, and he's coming the whole way from Paris. I'm hoping he can do this because he's staying up for the show, and I think he called off work tomorrow to be there. I just don't know why the damn thing isn't working, so...
What time is it there?
I don't know. I think it's like 5 hours later or 6 hours later. So it's
6 probably, yeah.
3 a.m. right now.
Maybe he fell asleep.
It could be. So we might have to try to call the other one and then try to get back to him. And I could try to message him or something. So let's try one more time. And now I think I lost them both, folks. This is just comical. There you are. Holy hell.
I'm here.
I'm going to try to call this other gentleman. And we might have to do this one the way that we did before with me holding the phone up, because he gave me actually a phone number. I thought he gave me a Skype, but Sometimes it's hard to keep track of these people. So let's try to call him, and then we'll come back to the other gentleman. So I'll message him in the meantime. So let's do this. Let's do this. We will get through this one way or another. All right, making the phone call.
Hello?
Hello, this is Frater Crow from Celestial Oddities Radio. How are you doing this evening?
How's it going? I'm doing pretty well.
I'm glad to have you on the show. We want to thank you for your time this evening. I apologize, we're running a little bit behind. We've been experiencing some very obscure technical difficulties, which we normally do not. So I apologize for running behind, but Daniel and I are here, and we would love to welcome you to the show. If you would like, feel free to, tell us who you are. You can use an alias. You can use your real name, however you prefer. Let us know where you're calling in from and a little bit about your story.
Well, I'm calling in from California. And, to be honest with you, I kind of got interested in the UFO phenomenon and stuff like that recently. Mainly because of the, what's been happening with the U.S. and stuff, how it's been sort of declassifying a lot of these videos and stuff. And, something I wanted to share with everyone, because, I can, explain about, my personal experience with, UFOs and stuff, and, if I saw an encounter or not, or, if I took a video of it or not, but, I think the real smoking gun here is, CE5, which is, I don't know if you guys know about it, but, it's sort of it's like a way you can, it was established by Stephen Greer. He's like this person that, I don't really like him that much because I feel like he just sells knowledge. I feel like all this stuff you can do at your home and everything. But, pretty much what CE5 is you make contact with these, whatever type of beings through meditation and stuff, and, I'm surprised because I was a really big skeptic. It fucking works, I've tried to replicate this. I have tons of videos on it. I just want to let people know it works. I was really over the fence on it, and I also convinced people around the United States to try it out. I had this girl I met her on Reddit, but I let her. I told her about C5 and stuff because she was saying that she had an encounter, that she saw this UFO, and I was like, oh well, if you believe in everything, just try this out, because I was just testing it out and stuff, and I saw it worked, and it kind of blew my mind. But I didn't really know who to tell in real life, because I feel like if I tell this to my real friends or my family or anything, they're gonna think I'm crazy, So I gave her the app and everything, and she tried it out, and I'm surprised she got it on the first try. She has a video of what essentially happened is you pretty much meditate. And you meditate towards these tones that the app uses and stuff. And, she said, I usually do it for 10 minutes. She said she did it for 45 minutes. So once this meditation kind of ended, she took a video of this, green orb type of stuff. This green ball of light just coming towards her. And it was moving to the right. It was pretty crazy. Really good video. You can really see the shock value, too, of the, the person doing this contact. And, just surprised, as I was when I first tried it out. So it works. I have a lot of videos on it and a lot of people's experiences too around the world. So I just thought it was something interesting, and I think everyone should try out CE5.
Well, no,
at least look into it.
I'm glad you shared that with us, because we're always telling our listeners out there, and we're always trying to spread awareness of contact. Not only do we gather stories of contact and use that as a way, as I was explaining just before this phone call, of connecting the bridge between different phenomena that happens to try to find more parallels between different experiences and different cryptids and aliens, but to also promote ways to do that. It's not just to hear stories. It's a way of promoting to our listeners to go out there and connect with what is out there. There is so much to be experienced, and the reason that most do not experience it is because they're not actively going out and trying to experience it. But if you go out and you are sincere in your methods of trying to do so, and you try to make contact, whether it be with cryptids, whether it be with UFOs or higher intelligences, whether it be with the paranormal and ghosts, a lot of times you are going to have a very profound experience if you only reach out your hand to try to do so. Now, I would love to have Dan throw in some input here because, as you said, it was a way for you to kind of make contact with higher intelligences and UFOs. Daniel is an experienced, medium in the vein of UFO contact. That is specifically what he works with. So, Daniel, could you throw some input out here?
Yeah, man. Listen, thank you so much for calling and sharing about this. I'm very familiar with CE5. Absolutely. We're based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and there's CE5 meetup groups out here that you can just join and go to, and there's like a host or a facilitator, and people will do these group-based meditations and listen to the tones and the beats and do the visualizations, and I've been invited to these multiple times. And I'm not sure if you're familiar. It's maybe slightly more bizarre than the concept of going into meditation or being a medium, but we do what's called as channeling, where you alter your brainwave frequencies, and there's a science behind this as well, but you alter your brainwave frequencies from the alpha state to the beta state, the theta, delta, gamma, and you can actually open your consciousness up to communicating to extraterrestrials that don't experience the same type of separation from person to person that humans do in terms of being telepathic and hearing each other's thoughts and things of that nature. So we use a type of channeling to actually have direct communication. And I've been doing that for maybe 7-8 years now. But I am very familiar with CE5, and I have seen it work where we can manifest, a physical craft will form in the sky, and you'll see lights or you'll see colors or sometimes just shapes of energy. So I can completely get behind what you're saying in terms of the CE5, and I can attest to its validity, and I do agree people could experiment with that.
And what's the difference between channeling and CE5? Just
out of curiosity. Right. Yeah, good question. So in CE5, it is a type of meditation where you are, in a sense, altering your frequency. You're altering your perception in a way, in a sense. And I also like the CE5 because it is more of like a group intentional thing. Well, at least it is out here. We do it in large groups. And people can do it individually, of course, but I think that in groups, there's more of a momentum behind that. There's more of a intention behind it, which helps it be more efficient. But channeling is like a type of mediumship where if you've ever heard, say, for example, a psychic medium who communicates to someone's dead relative, someone who's passed away, or an intuitive psychic medium who can, get messages from spirit. It's similar to that, only I like to think about it more scientifically, where you're going into a deep trance, a deep meditative trance, where you're almost moving your own personality, your own consciousness out of the way, and you're using your brain, your physical vessel, or your third eye, your pineal gland, as like a receiver, like a radio tower to receive the consciousness of other beings, and then they can sort of communicate through you. So they're similar in a sense, but I would say CE5 is more of an exercise or a manifestation tool to sort of make contact and get something to appear that's visible, whereas channeling is more of like you're actually bringing through the consciousness of extraterrestrials and allowing them to speak through you.
Wow, that's fascinating. I just have a question about, so you said that in Pittsburgh you have groups for CE5. Like, I was just wondering, if anyone else that's listening, because I'm also pretty curious too, because I'm actually doing all of this alone. And I don't know anyone around me that does this kind of stuff, so I was just wondering, like, where I can get that kind of information on groups and stuff.
No, that's a great question. And, I wouldn't even mind helping you out. We can maybe connect. We have a Facebook group. It's Celestial Oddities Paranormal Guys podcast on Facebook, and maybe we can connect and see about reaching out to the local communities to get more people involved, because I know that what you're doing works. And now wait till you experience it when you get another person, a third person, a fourth person, or a group of people who will get together, on a weekend and go under the stars and do this. The collective intention is very powerful. So I would guarantee you that there are people online looking for other people like you to get involved with.
Definitely. Yeah, and actually just backing off on what you said about more people. So I've been really taking the CE5 approach really, really, really slowly because I really don't know what I'm getting myself into. A lot of people have a lot of different experiences, And, well, one of the things is that, as I told you guys before, I convinced this girl, she's like around the Chicago area, around there, and she brought over her boyfriend. And, well, her boyfriend experienced something. Obviously, they got a lot more activity and everything. But something that happened is that, and this is something I've actually, one of the before I met this girl and before I even tried it myself, I try to get information from Redditors, and there's like the RCE5, and a lot of people were swearing that it was working, so I was really surprised, and it kind of I didn't really believe it because it's just such a crazy concept that you can telepathically communicate with these beings, So something I was getting a lot is that if you do it a lot with frequency, you start experiencing a lot of weird stuff. Like some guy told me about the hitchhiker effect. And I didn't really know what it was. I'm super confused about it because to be honest with you, I've only done CE5 twice, and both of the times it worked. I haven't really advanced from there. I'm kind of just seeing what other people are doing. But this girl that was near the Chicago area, she's been seeing a lot of stuff that ever since she started doing that, she's been seeing like a lot of from what I'm guessing, she's been doing this with frequency. Like, once she found out it worked, she started doing it a lot with her boyfriend and stuff. And she's been taking videos and pictures, and I have these videos and pictures, and it's kind of insane. Like, she's like kind of like telling me there's like this UFO that kind of follows her around. It's like this, just this metallic dot. I mean, at least from the pictures that she sent me, it's just like this metallic dot, and it kind of just from a distance, just kind of. She says it follows her. I'm not sure. I tried to ask her if it was mainly just because, like, after the CE5 experience, she was more aware of objects up in the sky or anything like that. But, yeah, I don't know. I just think it's interesting, and I don't know. I'm not really too sure what you guys have found in your data, if there's, like, any negative effects or if this is, like, type of stuff is normal. Because I know something, like, Stephen Greer, the guy who said it, this type of protocol and stuff, he said something that was really, became interesting to me, that even though you're establishing contact, it's not like it's going to end when you leave, The contact can be continuous, and I don't know if it just continues for this girl in particular, or I don't know what do you guys think?
Well, what I would like to say, I'll jump in here for a moment. So from a completely different perspective, I don't work much at all with aliens or UFOs or alienology or any of the type of methods that you or Daniel work with or have worked with. Mine is mainly on an occult background of ceremonial and ritual magic, and also work with the spirits of the human dead, so ghosts and apparitions. Now, I can tell you that is kind of a common thing, that once you turn the light on, so to speak, just like moths to a flame, things will start to get drawn to you. It's easier to turn it on than turn it off. Once you turn it on, it doesn't really go off. Now, the more that you push, the more that you try it, the more that you grow and build on that, the brighter you become, the more noticeable you become to not only the things that you are trying to connect with, but also to things beyond that. So, for example, in ceremonial and ritual magic, I work with a lot of entities one-on-one, both in audible and visual, projection or manifestation. And as you work with these deities, you can connect easier to them each and every time, but also you will start to get visitation from things outside of exactly what you're calling. Now, there are methods that you can use in my practice to kind of eliminate that or limit it, but you're still going to have other things try to come through. You're going to have other things try to communicate with you. So to speak, once you flip that light on, you've become a lantern in a very dark night. And now anything within a radius is seeing you, and a lot of them are going to be curious and come closer. So I would imagine doing the CE5 exercises, that the more you do it, the brighter the signal being emitted out from that individual will be. Therefore, the more alien races and contact that are going to pay attention to it and try to communicate, because unbeknownst to what a lot of people believe, these other things out there want to communicate with us. They might stay hidden and obscured in a lot of cases, but when they find someone who can see, hear, and understand or feel them, they will communicate with you, because they know 99% of the others around you will not see, hear, or feel them. So they will make contact just as you were trying to make contact with them. Daniel, do you agree?
Absolutely. I think they can absolutely continue, and it can amplify. And I wouldn't be afraid of that. I wouldn't be scared in any way, because in a sense, it's you're doing a manifesting ritual to make contact to cosmic beings. So you're only going to see that reflect more in other areas of your life, and that synchronicity can continue for you if you wanted to. But you can also feel empowered in the sense that, like, if you ever feel like you want to walk away, you don't want to do it anymore, you can choose when it ends as well too.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I mean, you are the one in control. You're initiating it, and you can also end that broadcast, that stream of connection. But like Daniel said, I wouldn't necessarily be afraid of it. It can be frightening to be so out of your normal realm of normalcy. I mean, whenever you make contact with anything, it's going to be a little startling and a little shocking at first, but also very enthralling and saying, wait a second, as you said, you've done it twice, and both times it worked. It might not do that for every person who does that, but you have had 100% success rate. I wouldn't expect it that 10 out of 10 times it will, but obviously you're batting 100 right now. Continue to push that, because you maybe have a knack for it, and reach deeper and deeper, and you will have more and more profound experiences. And what I've known through my practice is these experiences will change your life in amazing ways you can't even see right now in the short game, but in the long game, it will. And I think that's great. Bring awareness to those around you that show interest in it. Allow them to experience it for themselves, because too many things in this life will try to shelter you from the truth of what exists out there. We are the ones that have to be, the governors of our own life and reach out and tap into it, because it was meant to be tapped into. It wasn't meant to be lied to and hidden from us. It's there to interact with.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, I'm definitely going to be taking more into consideration CU5 and everything. I'm just taking like a very precautious, stance on it. Plus, also, I think that making contact is really meaningful. I feel like especially now that I've made sure it worked twice. Like the first time, I didn't know if it was just I don't know, just anomalous, just like kind of just just something random. But once I saw the second time, I knew this was like definitely working and everything. So I kind of just thought maybe I could establish contact next time, maybe with something more meaningful or something more I can take away with, maybe. Because something that's really interesting is that ever since I started doing this contact, I've been really seeing this perspective change that I've had in the world, almost like just in the past couple of days and weeks, almost like I've been a lot more aware of, like for example, I don't know if you guys know about this Just Stop Oil movement in England. I don't know if you guys know about it. It's like an activist group, an ecological group.
I haven't seen about it yet. No.
Well, it's just I just feel like ever since that, and like ever since just experiencing something that's just so out of normal, and kind of just gave me this whole new perspective in life, and gave me more of a I guess you could say like higher consciousness. I mean,
well, and that's it right there.
Consciousness, but
you nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just more aware of stuff like just from political to social stuff. It's just a lot more like I'm just like, wow, like we should really start changing stuff around the world, especially for the climate. Like in 10, 15 years we're going to be paying for a lot of shit, and I feel like ever since I had this experience, like I kind of just see it more clearer than ever. Like, this is such a tragedy, you know? And this is the crazy thing, because I'm actually an environmental scientist, and I'm studying to be an environmental scientist, and I've always been super passionate about it. But ever since I had this particular experience, like, I've never seen so much passion that I've ever showed for the environment that I'm showing right now, and it kind of blossomed out of this this experience I had with this UFO, these 2 UFOs I saw these 2 different days, and yeah, it kind of just gave me energy. I don't know, it kind of just gave me like the energy to make an activist group, or do some change about this, you know.
Well, and I think Daniel would agree with me that a lot of these vessels and these alien races actually watch over as guardians of our world, and keep an eye on us and keep us protected, and we don't realize that. So when you make contact with them, you're raising your vibrational frequency to a higher level to match theirs and communicate. But even if you drop back down to a normalcy for yourself, you still have a vibrational resonance or residue that sticks with you, and you'll start to notice that, wait a second, I feel a little different, I seem a little different, I'm thinking a little different. It's because you never go exactly back to where you were. You might go close, but you're now a little bit above, and each time you contact, each time you raise higher and higher, and as you raise to higher frequencies and vibrations, your thoughts and your patterns and your mind will change and become a higher version of yourself, but also be mixed with an attunement of the beings that you contact and are in communication with. So you're experiencing a little bit of a higher version of yourself, but you're also experiencing some of the feelings of the beings that you're contacting, and that's probably why you're feeling so passionate about these same things.
Right. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just something that, I never really tied it with the CE5 phenomenon, but I was just seeing that, like, after I had these 2 things, like, it just, something inside me kind of clicked, and instead of making me focus more on them and, like, the outside, it kind of just made me focus more on, like, wait, one of the main reasons they're not probably not contacting us is because, we're just, like, a bunch of violent monkeys, like, pretty much unevolved apes.
Exactly.
With nukes and stuff, and that kind of just like, and especially seeing like, how many people are like climate deniers. Like, dude, that's insane. You know what I mean? That's like, it's just there's just a lot of things that like I see like in this reality, this world. There's so many things that have to be worked on, and I these past because I've been doing this CE5 for like 2 weeks or so, and like these past 2 weeks I've just been feeling that in a much more profound level, doing much more active research on it. And, even like, I thought you guys were going to know about this Just Stop Oil movement. It was pretty famous because they're the ones that ruined the Van Gogh painting. I don't know if you guys
okay. So I did see that. Yeah, I just wasn't aware of who was behind it.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, so this happened around during the same time with CE5 and stuff, and I've always seen these. Like, this is an example of this perspective change that I told you about, right? So I've always seen these groups, these radical, pretty much, I don't know if they're eco-terrorists or whatever, but they're very disruptive, right? And I've always seen them as, like, not really helping out the cause, kind of just being a nuisance, But after analyzing it, and after seeing so many news reports, I kind of saw, like, wait a second, like, people aren't, like, I kind of realized, like, people aren't talking about what the message is supposed to be, which is supposed to be like, what's more important to you? Is it like, this fucking piece of art, which is like encased in a fucking glass, it's not gonna happen or anything like that? Or do you care more about, like actual life, like, keeping this planet safe and like, just fucking oil destroying the ecosystem pretty much. And I saw like a lot of people, a lot of like, comedians and like these late night show hosts, like they didn't really focus on the main message. Instead they just like focused on ridiculing them. And I kind of just, for some weird reason, like I have no sympathy for these people. Like these people that like go into like stores and just like throw a bunch of like milk on the floor. Like I back then, like I didn't really see the deal with it. And I thought like, oh, these people are just like attention seeking fucks. But after this, like, I don't know if it's tied to the CE5, but there's some sort of perspective change that made me think, like, oh my god, like, I can kind of see why these people are so, like, I was more passionate towards them, and I understood their views better, and I like, yeah, maybe fucking up Van Gogh's painting maybe isn't the right direction, but I understand that you have to do that for shock value, you know? So it kind of just gave me just different perspectives, and just I think that was the most crucial, biggest change that I saw. That I was more empathetic, and even not empathetic, but even more like motivated by these radical ecologists, pretty much, you know.
No, like I said, I think that definitely is a part of what you have gone through these last couple of weeks doing that. And I think you need to dig in a few more times, obviously a lot more than a few, but I'm saying soon dig in a few more times to see what kind of changes happen. Now, before we finish the call for this evening, Daniel, any last remarks you would like to add? And also, as Daniel said, you guys can connect, and I can get you in touch with one another to try to see if we can find you a group in your area to dive further into the group experience, because if one battery cell can produce that much energy, when you put 10 of them together, and I can attest to this because of ritual, it'll make insane things happen. It very much will empower it. So, Daniel, any last thoughts on this? Daniel, you still there?
Yeah, man. I just want to thank you very much for wanting to express yourself.
Some strange is going on here tonight, but either way, we do very much appreciate you obviously allowing us to hear your experience and for promoting this wonderful method of contact out there. We will get you in contact with Daniel, like I said, to try to find you a group in your area, and all I can say is thank you for coming on the show and sharing your experience.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. It's honestly been a pleasure being here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, and you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye. Well, folks, you heard about...
I'm still here, by the way.
No, you're still there. I couldn't hear a single word you said.
I'm here.
It's all right. Whatever. This whole night's strange. But, folks, you heard it. I mean, tonight we've heard about premonition and ghostly visitation. We have heard about profound historical event replays that have happened to psychic mediums. We've heard about UFOs being spotted in the sky. We've heard about connection through methods of frequency attunement. We have heard, just a slew of different amazing stories, and that's what we're in it for. Daniel, before we finish, I tried to message the gentleman. I feel bad. He's from Paris. He said he called off work tomorrow to be on the show. I'm guessing, like you said, he fell asleep, I think, because I tried 3 times. We can try him one more time here in a second. If he doesn't answer, I figured we'll finish this out. I had one other story to read off this evening. I had 2, actually, but I'll read the one. I'll save the other one for the next show because it's actually really good. And with all the difficulties, I don't know how many people are going to listen this far into the episode, but let's read this one real quick. It goes along with your friend Sean, and this is from a gentleman by the name of Alberto Ruiz, and he is from Tampico, Mexico. This happened on the 10th of September, 2022, so pretty recent. He says, last month I bought a new camera for a little podcast I'm doing with a friend. I was outside at 10 p.m. more or less, trying out my camera, taking pictures of the stars in high-resolution exposure. A cousin was there with me. We saw several satellites, little light, like a little star moving in a straight line, not blinking, just a little light moving. But suddenly we saw another one. But this one was turning on and off. It was moving faster than a satellite. I was surprised, and the first thing I thought was, oh, it could be a UFO. Then in the manner of a joke, I told my cousin, it's a UFO. He's like 7 years younger than I am. And I was still trying to kid with my cousin, and again in a manner of a joke, I told the UFO, could you shine brighter? And there you go. It did. Each time it turned on, this time was a huge white light that I almost saw decomposing into colors in the tip of the light shafts. I don't know if you understand how I'm trying to explain this. Some kind of chromatic aberration. I was amazed, and I knew I had my camera there, but it's a Sony a6400 with a 16-50mm lens, and it has almost no zoom. And anyways, I was so excited and happy with it, answering, that I just wanted to watch it with my own eyes. My cousin told me to record it with my cell phone, but at the time when I did, He got blocked out by a tree, and it didn't look so well in the video anyways. Now I think about it every single time I look at the night sky and I try to find an explanation. That light was amazing, pure, like nothing that I'd ever seen before. I can't explain in words how that huge light looked, and the object at first looked like a simple satellite turning on and off. But satellites don't do that, and airplanes don't shine like that. I just want to believe that I genuinely had an interaction with something different. And once again, that came to us from Eldeberto Ruiz from Tampico, Mexico, from September 10th of this year, 2022. Thank you so much, Eldeberto, for sharing that story with us.
I think it's awesome. I love sharing these, and the sky, the UFO phenomenon. I have to say it again, and I want to leave him and Sean with the same message one more time, is that these are synchronized, organized events that didn't happen by chance or fluke or coincidence. It was something that you were meant to see that might download more meaning somewhere in your life in some unexpected way that is special and unique to you. But that all of these sightings are special and synchronized, and I just love hearing about them.
I agree. I mean, here's the thing. If you were to say to that blinking light in the sky, hey, can you shine any brighter? And then it does, it's responding to you. Therefore, it knows you are there. Yeah. And it would be pretty silly to think that it didn't want you to see it if it reacted so quickly.
It's intelligent communication that was deliberate.
Exactly. Saying to you, hey, I'm here, pay attention. You're already looking up in the sky, right? You're already taking pictures and trying to do your podcast that you're making, right? Well, hey, check me out. And then when you notice it and you're joking and say, look, it's a UFO. Can you get any brighter? And then it does. It's saying, yeah, buddy, I am a UFO, and we hear you, and we're communicating with you. I know people would say, how would it possibly hear him? It doesn't hear with its ears. It doesn't have a device on its vessel that's picking up you saying it 1,000 miles away. It's telepathically picking you up. The thing about aliens that most people don't understand is that they operate on frequency, not necessarily in different planes, though you could consider it that. They are here at all times. They are just operating at a different frequency. That is why you can have three people looking at the sky. One see it and the other two didn't, because you, for some reason, were more susceptible to that frequency than your two friends. You are all three in the same place at the same time, but only one of you had the secret key to see it. And
that's right.
And that's what this last gentleman who was on the phone with us, through this method that I don't know much about, to be honest with you. You can use this apparently, and I know of other methods of just, trance, to be able to connect with other spirits or other life forms, because you're rising or raising your frequency to match theirs, as I already said earlier. And when you do that, you can communicate, whether that be aliens, whether that be ghosts, whether that be daemons, whether that be cryptids. They all operate on their own individual frequency, and you are not only a transmitter, but you're a receiver. So you can project out certain frequencies and gain attention, and then pull in certain frequencies to transmute that message. Folks, it's very powerful. It's very real. And if you're listening out there, I beg you to try it. Like I tell everyone, I've never experienced any type of experience before. When is the last time you really went out and tried? Well, I never have. Well, then how the hell would you have an experience? Sometimes you're lucky to have these one-offs like some of our callers have. But more often than not, it's those seeking it that will find.
I mean, that's absolutely correct. I named a movie called For Those Who Seek.
Yes, you have.
That was about aliens.
Yes, you have. And if you haven't watched it out there, folks, definitely check it out. Daniel's put out some great red pill films of just really sharing truths with all of you, and done in a very elegant and great way. So make sure you check out his work. Let's try to call this gentleman one last time. I don't think he's going to answer, but I figure why the hell not. At least I could say I gave it everything I had. So Dan, hopefully it doesn't disconnect you, but hold on one second. Dan, I would say that we gave it a valiant effort. 4 phone calls is all you get from me. You still there? Oh.
Yeah, I was just thinking, we'll send him a replay of the episode and let him know that we did our best.
Yeah, and I double-checked the name and everything to make sure, and I messaged him on the platform that we originally connected on and even told him, like, hey, I'm trying to call you, and then, hey, I called 3 times, and now I just did the 4th. So, oh, well, that's okay. Well, folks, thank you so much for sticking around what turned out to be the longest episode of Celestial Oddities. Not the longest episode I've ever done on any of my radio shows, but certainly the longest on this specific one. We're hitting 2.5 hours here, so thank you if you stuck around. We might even go back and I'll make a way of editing and clipping out certain chunks of this for highlight reels for things like Instagram and other places like Facebook that Daniel can post up for us, and share some of these amazing encounters and experiences that you guys shared with us. Thank you to all of our callers, to all of our listeners for all the support that you've given us. And other than that, catch us back in a couple of weeks. I believe our next episode, and let me look it up just so I don't mix it up because the dates are strange right now. We are looking at next episode is 11/9, and it will be a guest episode. We are not announcing who that is just yet, but we will have a special guest on the show and be doing an in-depth interview. So stick around for that on 11/9, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as always, you can catch our shows for Nights of the Nephilim staggered in the weeks in between, though tomorrow we do have a special episode for the Samhain edition, bringing on Satanic Magus of the Magnum Opus Satanic Cult. That's for Nights of the Nephilim radio show, and that is talking about Alistair Noct, who is a genius, and I'm very excited to be interviewing him. That's right here on Celestial Oddities Radio tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Other than that, thank you so much. We love you. We're glad to be back. And Daniel, go ahead and finish us out.
Listen, guys, thank you so much for being here. And I would like to give a special shout out to our friend Natasha, who does help us with our social media. Hey, Natasha. And guys, listen, if you celebrate, happy Halloween. If you don't, that's cool too. Thanks for being here, guys.
That's it. And yes, thank you very much, Natasha, for all the work you're doing. I apologize. I'm so wrapped up in these damn phone calls over here. But thank you so much for helping pick up the ball where I was not able to after Facebook banned me, and keeping us moving, keeping us going. Thank you, and thank you to the fans out there. Happy Halloween. We'll catch you next time on Celestial Oddities Radio.